In Indiana's House District 66, where family farms meet neighborhood shops, where Scottsburg, Charlestown, and Sellersburg have more in common with each other than with the headlines that try to divide them. One question keeps rising at kitchen tables and front porch conversations alike. Are our leaders solving real problems for regular Hoosiers? Tonight, we're here to dive into that question with someone who says he's ready to fight for everyday families, not special interests. Welcome to the show. Tonight, we're joined by Ryan Price, a Democratic candidate for Indiana House District 66. A husband and a father of two, Ryan describes himself as working class Hoosier who spent his life bouncing blue collar days with office jobs and community service. He says that upbringing and experience have shaped his belief in America, where healthcare isn't a luxury. Public schools are strong and fully funded, and workers aren't stuck earning the same wages while costs keep climbing. Price has been active in local fundraising, budgeting, and community building. Duties, he says, remind him daily why people matter more than political gains. In tonight's conversation, we will be talking about the future of education, healthcare access in rural southern Indiana, jobs and wages, public trust, and what leadership looks like when you come from the community itself. Ryan, thank you for joining me today.
Thanks for having me, Derek. It's an honor to be here.
It's always a pleasure to have someone actually sit down and be willing to talk about issues that everyday Hoosiers are going through.
Yeah, like a lot of people, I'm just a family man. I work every day to put food on the table and that sort of thing. Costs just keep getting up, and there's always more and more asked of citizens. I'm not a politician. I've never run for an office. I just am a concerned citizen that wants to do what's right for my community, my neighbors. Everybody I know is important to me, and they all have people that.
So let's get into this. District 66 sits in the shadow of Louisville's economy, but wages here often don't match rising housing and living costs. What specific policies would you support to ensure families in Scottsburg, Charlestown, and Sellersburg can actually afford to live where they work?
Well, as you know, our minimum wage here is the same as the federal minimum wage, $7.25 an hour. That's not a livable wage at all. And I actually don't like calling it a minimum wage. It's more like a minimum lifestyle. Someone who makes $7.25 an hour doesn't have the same lifestyle as someone who makes, millions of dollars a year. And when you break millions of dollars a year down, we're talking of thousands of dollars an hour. So let's compare hours to hours, kind of thing. So raising the minimum wage also raises the spending that people are allowed to do. That puts more money back into the economy. And by keeping it low, a lot of jobs around here do start, between $12, $15, $16 an hour. And that might sound good when you say, well, it's twice as what minimum wage is. But we all know minimum wage should be a lot higher. So if minimum wage was about $12, $15 an hour, those jobs wouldn't seem as appealing. And you always hear the phrase competitive wage. We have competitive wages here. I want to work for somebody who has industry leading wages, right? So that's the kind of stuff that actually drives up competition in companies as well. If you're hiring at more money than everyone else, then you're going to get the best employees that stay at that company for a long time. Some other things that we could do to help out is, instead of just giving tax incentives to big corporations for, creating jobs only, they say, well, we're going to create X amount of jobs, right? They don't tell you how much those wages are going to bring in. We need to tie the two things together. Decades ago, that was kind of how it was done back when Eisenhower started the huge taxes on the elites. If corporations wanted tax breaks, they had to reinvest that back into their employees. So we need to start doing things like that again. If we can guarantee an actual surviving livable wage where people can thrive, not just, get by, then we can start to talk about tax breaks for those companies. And then, of course, the big issue is also housing. Housing prices are completely skyrocketing. There's not enough of it, which also coincides with the cost of the building and that sort of thing. So we just need to incorporate some policies around those types of things. That way people can have a better living of standard of living in the state.
Residents often hear about major highway projects, but local roads, sidewalks, and drainage issues remain unresolved. What infrastructure investments would you prioritize inside our towns?
So here in Southern Indiana, a lot of this district specifically sits right on the Ohio River. So flooding is an issue. We get a lot of rains around here. Because of the river system and the lakes that we have down here. So we need more things like watersheds, for collecting runoff. We definitely need to upgrade our sewage system. There's a lot of roads in the rural towns that will flood easily because the sewer pipes just can't handle the amount of water coming in. And a lot of the funding is brought in from the city for those specific projects, but smaller towns don't really have the funds to back that up. So we need to strengthen the relationship between them and the counties, in order to get those funds. And, there's a lot of pilfering that happens from some counties to help out other projects that don't affect us directly. Um, a lot of dollars from this district go up to Indianapolis and never come back. I would like to change some of that. And I understand that, we have to share the wealth around the state, but when you lose more than you're getting back, that's not a fair deal for Hoosier. So
As growth spills north from Louisville, how do you balance attracting jobs and investment while avoiding District 66 becoming just a commuter district with low wages and little local ownership?
well, there has been some boom in certain industries around here. A big development is River Ridge. They have very large warehouses back there. Like there's an Amazon and several other manufacturers' warehouses. There's a data center going in there right now as well. So they have been bringing in those types of jobs here locally, trying to cut back on how many people cross the river into Louisville for jobs, because that's what a lot of Hoosiers do. They actually travel to Kentucky, and they're actually having to pay wages over there as well, not just the state, but the county taxes as well for Kentucky. So they get double dipped a lot of times. So they're trying to bring some jobs back in, but again, we have to have incentive to be good jobs. Amazon is notorious for underpaying and overworking people, so it's not really a fair deal for the employees as well. Bezos is trying to put people in space for fun, and people can't put food on the table. That's a problem. If we can incentivize these businesses to come in, hire at good wages with local hires instead of bringing their people in from out of state, that's going to help the people that are here already, and then we can talk about growing from outwards in after that.
Many families in this district worry about school funding, class sizes, and losing good teachers to neighboring states. What would you do at the State House to strengthen public schools and keep our educators here?
Now, this is a big subject all around the state right now. Public school funding is being gutted to pay for private and charter schools. There's really not an easy way to say it other than that. I think when I last checked, the 2023-2024 school year, $430 million of public school funds was shifted over to fund tuition for private schools. And then the 24-25 year, that actually went up like 12 or 13% to $490 something million. So we need to keep public school funding for public schools. And people say, well, I like what this school does. Well, okay, what can the public schools do that you like so much about the private schools? Maybe we can just incorporate that at a much lower cost. School class sizes have gotten very large around here. There's areas between Charlestown's, local housing and economic boom that's happening. They built a school, and it's a fairly new school, and it's already jam packed, right? All the schools around here average about 25 to 30 students per classroom, and with classrooms that size, it's hard for teachers to get the work done they need to do and get students to focus. Special education is a problem. They only look at the numbers for special education. They don't really look at the needs of those students specifically. So those are a lot of people that get left behind, unfortunately. So we can just do better. And a lot of that's going to start with just putting the public school money back into the public schools. Private school tuition is privately funded. That's how it's always been, and that's how it should always be.
For many residents, especially in Scottsburg, healthcare means long drives for limited options. How would you work to expand access to affordable healthcare and mental health services in rural and small town areas of the district?
So around here, unless you live next to I-65, you do not live close to any kind of medical facility. Scottsburg has a small hospital close to downtown, but it's, like I said, it's right off I-65. There's another one in Clark County here, Greater Clark Memorial, that's also right next to I-65. But the district goes over, if you were to drive straight over, it would take you a little over an hour to get to the end of the district. There's only maybe one or two small, immediate care centers there, but they're often they're quite packed. You're sitting there for hours. It's supposed to be immediate care, and then some of the rural areas, like out in Marysville or Bethlehem, you can't even get EMS service out there. So we need to have more rural clinics that can service major incidents, even if just for the short interim until someone can get help to a bigger facility. I think the Scottsburg Hospital, I think it has about 25 ER beds available. And when you compare that to Clark Memorial with over 200, I think it's about 250. It's a big difference. So all these people out here in the rural areas, if something were to happen, while you're out farming, who knows how long it could take to actually get you help. So if we just implement some dollars into the system, make it more transparent along the way as well. There's often hidden fees with medical costs in these types of facilities. And to incentivize doctors to go there, you could even offer to help out with their costs to operate, because a lot of times doctors are fully invested themselves into these facilities. So if they can get some kind of state backing to fund that, that's going to help Hoosiers out a lot.
Charlestown and Sellersburg are seeing rapid housing development. How do you ensure growth includes affordable housing, infrastructure support, and community input rather than just maximizing developer profits?
Well, when a new community wants to come in, there should always be transparency with the public, right? So you have to have town hall meetings about that. One thing that I like you just said, a lot of the developers, they want to maximize their profits. So if we can incentivize them to build smaller, more affordable homes, starter homes, right? We can waive some of the fees that they may have to incur with the permits and everything like that. Possibly even give them a lower tax bracket to incentivize them. There's got to be a way that we can make homes that younger people can actually start families in. I think what's the average age range right now for a first time home buyer, like 50 or something like that, 45 or something like that.
45 is what I believe it is.
Yeah, it's something like that. That's insane. So, we're always talking about, well, people need to have jobs and have families and do all these things. Well, let's help them do it. Let's limit corporate ownership of buying up these smaller houses. I know back in 2019, this was right when the housing market started to boom again and the prices were skyrocketing right before the interest rates went up. My wife and I were looking to move. Our family was growing. We were in a 900 square foot house at the time. And we started looking around. We found some houses that we liked. And because they were all going so quickly, we were just offering asking price and lost every single one of them because people were giving more than asking price. And it's a red flag when that happens, right? What person in their right mind pays more than for something that it's worth? Someone who wants to profit off of that. So you get big companies like Berkshire Hathaway. They're bad about buying up houses, and there's several others out there as well. So if we can limit, a lot of these first starter homes to owner occupied, that kind of thing, that's going to be a better incentive for people to be able to afford housing and limit the corporate takeover of the market.
Southern Indiana has dealt with flooding, water concerns, and environmental pressures tied to development. What role should the state play in protecting water quality and local land while still allowing responsible growth?
For flooding, I talked just a second ago about looking for homes, right? One of the neighborhoods we were interested in because it was a close proximity to a good school, and we had some friends live there. The house that we looked at, and every house on that street was built in a floodplain. When we found that out, it really changed our minds about wanting to live there, right? So let's stop building in areas that we know are going to have flood problems. Let's do that first of all. Um, and again, I think I mentioned earlier about like watersheds, things like that. Do you remember years back there was a really bad hurricane down in Texas and Houston was flooded? A lot of that was because of overdevelopment, right? The natural layout of Texas wouldn't have let that happen, but because they developed it incorrectly, there was a lot of low-lying spots in town. So we just have to have good engineering whenever we're going to build these projects, building berms and things like that if necessary. Um, it's just about being responsible. I did see today, I believe, one of the water companies out here actually installed this brand new water tower, though. So this is actually a positive message. It has, I think, the first PFAS, the PFAS forever chemicals filtration system in it. That's a big step. I was really happy when I read that because Charlestown specifically has a history of like boiling water alerts and things like that. So they have this brand new filtration system that they've installed or are installing, one of the two. It was announced, right? So that's great for the city of Charlestown. And we can do things like that for other towns as well. Everybody has a water tower. So let's just be responsible and take care of our people.
Many constituents work in logistics, manufacturing, healthcare, or service jobs. What protections or policies would you advocate for to support workers' rights, workplace safety, and fair pay in District 66?
Well, Indiana is a right to work state. It sounds good, kind of like how the Patriot Act sounded good, right? Um, Unions are a good thing. It's a way for employees to band together and bargain against their employer for better living wages. Where I work at, some people make good money, some people don't. We have a food pantry there, right? It's a big corporation that I work for, and we have to bring in supplies so that some of the lower paying paid employees can have things like deodorant, toothbrushes, whatever the case may be. So that's not responsible leadership on that level. Again, unions wouldn't allow things like that to happen. My mom, she's retired. She worked in healthcare for a long time. And she said that anytime anyone in the office brought up working, forming a union, this was at a hospital, um, that was quickly snubbed out. Okay. Like, no, 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 we're not doing that here. If you keep that up, you're gone, basically. So, when you're threatening the people that you depend on to stay in business, that's not really a good model. So again, workers' protections, we've been ripped off our whole lives, trickle down economics. Imagine you and your boss and his boss and his boss go out to lunch for pizza and you excuse yourself to go to the restroom. When you come back, there's nothing but crust left. And they say, hey, box it up. You and the other employees can have that. That's trickle down economics right there. Okay. We can't survive off that.
A common frustration we hear is that lawmakers don't listen once elected. How will you stay accountable to residents of Scottsburg, Charlestown, and Sellersburg while bouncing party priorities at the State House?
I mean, transparency is the biggest thing, being, available to people whenever they reach out to you, not hiding behind closed doors. I post online all the time. Sometimes it's my opinion, sometimes it's the news, whatever the case may be. I have no problems fielding my own emails. I don't have like a crew or a team that answers emails or social media for me. If I'm responding to your comment, that's me. It's all just about being open and available. As a community volunteer, I'm constantly trying to let people know, hey, here's what's going on around here. If you guys want to talk about it, let's meet up. So I have no problems doing that.
Really, what moment, issue, or experience convinced you that now is the right time for you to run? What would be meaningfully different about 66 if you earn the seat?
Well, 66 has absent leadership right now, and it's a lot of culture war policy type things instead of, benefiting our lives policy. So I am just one man, but I can at least be another tool in the bag to go to work for you. Everybody needs a set of wrenches. I can be one of those wrenches, right? So, I'm not going to promise the moon, but I promise that I will fight to stand up for people. Again, I'm just a working class dad. I was born and raised in Southern Indiana. My family is here. I raised my kids here. So I'm just one of the people. I shop and eat around here all the time. I enjoy all of our state parks and local parks. I do a lot of fishing. Um, so I just care about the community. And after a lifetime of just disappointment from leadership, I've constantly seen the people sold out, basically, right? There's always money for special interests. There's never money for us. I just don't understand it, basically. There's the old saying, they got money for war, but can't feed the poor, right? And I think, what's his name? James Tallarico. Our problem is isn't that we can't feed the hungry, we can't satisfy the rich, or whatever the case may be. I might be paraphrasing there, but
Hi, I'm Dr. Cindy Worth, and I'm running for Indiana's 6th Congressional District. I'm a lifelong Hoosier. I grew up here in Columbus. I went to school here, met my husband here, raised my family here. I've served my community as a public school teacher for more than a decade, and ultimately, it was that experience that motivated me to run for public office. Any good teacher knows that the struggles of a working class family will affect a child in the classroom. That's how topics like access to education, affordable housing, healthcare, fair wages, and a safe environment became the platform on which I built my campaign. I pursued and completed a congressional fellowship which allowed me to study bipartisan policy writing alongside lawmakers in Washington, D.C. I've been engaging voters in the 6th District since 2022, and I've had the pleasure of getting to know so many incredible people. It will be an honor to soon be your voice in Washington because you are worth every moment of this fight. I'm Cindy Worth, and I approve this message.
All right, Ryan, we've talked about the issues, the district, and what you want to change. It's now time to strip it down to the essentials. This is our hold 'em or fold 'em round. I'm
okay.
going to give you a series of statements, no speeches, no hedging, just a simple answer. Hold 'em if you agree, fold 'em if you don't. If you feel the urge to explain, resist it. Let the voters hear where you stand. Are you ready?
Fire away.
Indiana should raise the minimum wage above the federal floor.
Absolutely hold.
Public schools in southern Indiana are underfunded.
Absolutely hold.
Teachers deserve higher pay, even if it means reallocating money from other state priorities.
Absolutely hold.
Healthcare access in rural areas like Scottsburg is a state responsibility, not just a market issue.
That's an absolute hold.
Indiana should expand access to mental health services, even if it increases the state budget.
Hold.
Local communities should have more to say when large housing developments are approved in places like Charlestown and Sellersburg.
Gotta hold them.
Workers should have stronger protections when it comes to workplace safety and wage theft.
Hold them.
Indiana has focused too much on attracting corporations, not enough on supporting small local business.
I'm going to raise on that one, actually. It's so
right
much
ahead.
worse. It is so much worse than that. We cater to the big corporations now because they're the ones greasing the hands, right? So if you look at the gap between the wellness of big business and the wellness of citizens, it is a huge, huge difference. So yeah, hold them.
Elected officials should be barred from accepting large donations from industries they regulate.
Yes, hold them.
If party leadership conflicts with the needs of House District 66, the district should come first.
Correct, hold them.
Ryan, I want to thank you for taking the time to sit down with us today and for putting yourself forward to serve the people of Indiana's 66th House District. Running for office isn't easy, especially when you're talking about real issues that affect real families in places like Scottsburg, Charlestown, and Sellersburg. So I appreciate you showing up, answering the questions directly, and letting voters hear where you stand. At the end of the day, the show isn't about parties, talking points, or political theater. It's about accountability. It's about making sure the people asking for your votes are willing to answer to the people who give them. And that responsibility doesn't stop on election day. To everybody watching or listening, this is your district, your schools, your roads, your healthcare, your future. Don't let anyone tell you your voice doesn't matter. Ask the questions, check the receipts, pay attention to who shows up and who doesn't. Ryan, thank you again for joining us, and we wish you the very best moving forward. And to everyone at home, stay informed, ask questions, and as always, hold them accountable.